Today in episode 43 of the Play Guitar Podcast, it's my introduction for guitar improvisation. Is this just something only a few are able to do, or is this a skill we can learn and perfect over time? So stay tuned. Welcome to episode 43 of the Play Guitar Podcast. I'm Lee, and this is the podcast that's determined to make you a better guitar player. No matter if you're just starting out or you've been playing for years, this is the show that will help you become the guitarist you always wanted to be. Improvising, coming up with great musical ideas right on the spot. It's a huge part of the appeal of playing guitar. We've all seen our favorite guitarists play these awesome solos in a live setting that they weren't the original solo from the song's recording that you know, but it sounded just as good and different and pretty fun. So one of the favorite pastimes of most guitar players is noodling, just sitting around playing the guitar just for fun, trying out new things when the pressure is off. And most likely no one's listening depending on how loud your amplifier is. So we all sound great when we do this. It's kind of like singing in the shower. You always feel like you sound great doing this, but the first time you have to create something on the spot and it's in front of other players or in front of an audience, you quickly realize that improvising is a lot more complex than just noodling around on the guitar. To be a great improviser, there are a lot of things that have to be taken into consideration. And at first it can be pretty frustrating. And as guitarists, we're all accustomed to dealing with some frustration. Now, when you first start, you're just holding a guitar and pressing the strings down is a challenge. And then after that, just being able to play your first chords and making sure that they sound right, that can be frustrating too. And you could get that sinking feeling that you might not ever be able to figure this thing out. Fortunately, usually this doesn't last long and you're off to conquer your next adventure on the guitar. Well, improvising is another one of those small frustrations, and with the right knowledge and some regular time spent with the guitar, you can be a great improviser as well. So today we're going to talk about the things we need. What are the things that we need to improvise? Well, I'm sure you've got most of what you need already, but if not, let's take a look at the building blocks of an improviser. The first thing we need are scales. To create some basic melodies, we're going to need our scale patterns. And if you're to the point where your open chords and your bar chords are solid, the next step is usually to start looking at scales. Scales being a collection of notes to choose from to create melodies, they're going to be our bread and butter with improv. At first, when you're starting to play solos, it's so important to get a solid understanding of the strong inside sounds. With popular music, that's pretty easy. You just stick with the big four scales. That's the major scale, the minor scale, natural minor scale, the major pentatonic, and the minor pentatonic scales. Those are our inside sounds. But as you progress on the guitar, you'll want to add more tension to your solos. There are many scales and devices that can give you these sounds, the tense sounds, and I'll be featuring some of those in some upcoming videos. But if you're just getting into playing scales or you started and you found yourself struggling a little bit or you're confused, you can head over to playguitarpodcast.com/scales and I'll put the link to that in the show notes. This will take you to my guide on the 5-pattern system. And that shows you the easiest and most effective way to unlock scales on the fretboard, and it's based on the big four inside scales. Having a solid understanding of these scale patterns in all the different keys is an essential part of being an improviser. Let's talk about the other thing you need. The other thing you need to have to start improvising is a solid understanding of how chords relate to each other and how scales relate to chords. Understanding how chord progressions work and what the function of each chord in the group is, it will allow you to move forward to more advanced improvising and allowing the chord progressions to guide your note and your scale choices. Both of these topics are an ongoing process, and there's always something new to learn about scales as well as chords and chord progressions. It never ends. So no matter where you are as an improviser, adding to your knowledge of scales and chords will keep pushing you forward. So today I introduced improv and went over the things you need to get started playing with that scales and chords. And we're going to move on to this part 2, where I talk about how to get started improvising and how to move forward. And I share a special technique that I use with all of my students that really can help you get started in the right direction. But before we do that, I want to remind you about my free video lesson. It's called Get Your Blues Soloing Under Control. It's the 6 steps I've found that will give you the right foundations for playing killer blues solos in no time at all. I put together this lesson. I got together with some of the listeners and I figured out what could really help them right now. So I know this can help you take your soloing in a new direction. The easy way to find this is go to freeblueslesson.com. And when you do this, you can also get news about all my podcasts, videos, and other cool stuff all sent right to your inbox. So go ahead and check that out at freeblueslesson.com. So thanks again for joining me today, and stay tuned for part 2, where I talk about how to get started improvising and how to move forward.